Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, in January, some folks could receive more money on their Social Security checks as the future of the program is debated. And President Biden signs a law impacting veterans that have been exposed to toxic burn pits, how he hopes to improve health care benefits moving forward.
Plus, chilly air continues to filter into the region behind yesterday's cold front. How low we could go coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts right now.
Dedicated to Southern and Eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. People who receive Social Security are about to see a bigger number on their checks. As Washington News Bureau reporter Jamie Bittner explains, the pay bump is coming next year as lawmakers debate the future of the program.
For many seniors, the bump in Social Security couldn't come fast enough. The 8.7% increase is the largest in 40 years, but it's a short-term fix for a long-term problem. Most seniors are living on under $30,000 a year, says AARP, so next year's cost of living adjustment, otherwise known as COLA, is a sigh of relief.
Really super important that we have this COLA over time, because you can imagine what the impact of 1 year of high inflation is, but you can see what happens over a period of years. You fall further and further behind each year.
Democratic Representative John Larson says Congress needs to do more. Officials have warned the program is in danger of running short on money in the next 15 years.
They're going to get a big bump in COLA because of this pandemic this year, but that formula needs to be fixed. And everybody needs an across-the-board increase because there hasn't been one in 51 years. Plus,
he wants to get rid of a tax cap that he says protects the rich.
Who are they? People making over $400,000, who, for many, stopped paying into Social Security on January 2nd.
The easiest thing always for Democrats is to raise taxes and raise fees, and all that does is reduce hurt the economy.
Republican Senator Rick Scott has called for Social Security to be reevaluated every 5 years. But he says that doesn't mean he wants to cut the program.
I will not cut Medicare benefits or Social Security benefits.
And he blames too much government spending for putting it at risk.
We ought to make sure that these programs are preserved, and the way you make sure those programs are preserved is you go through them every year.
Other Republicans have suggested raising the retirement age from 67 to 70 or updating the payment formula. In Washington, I'm Jamie Bittner.
Well, your wallet is likely taking a hit this holiday season, but prices at the pump are providing some relief. Gas prices have dropped again, falling to a 15-month low. AAA reports the average cost for a gallon of gas is now $3.18. That's 14 cents lower than the previous week and 56 cents lower than just 1 month ago. 19 states now have an average gas price of under $3 a gallon. From what I've seen, it's mainly under $3 around eastern Kentucky, too. Some encouraging news for home buyers. Mortgage interest rates have dropped for the 5th straight week. The average rate for a 30-year fixed mortgage is now 6.31%. That's down 0.2% from a week ago, but it's still more than double what mortgage rates were a year ago when they stood at 3.1%. The Federal Reserve's unprecedented series of rate hikes have been targeted to tame soaring inflation, but mortgage rates have been falling during the last few days, following data that inflation may have finally reached its peak. The White House is working to raise awareness about the PACT Act, signed into law this August. It greatly expands health care benefits for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. The president spread the message today at a National Guard center named in honor of his late son, Bo. CBS's Skylar Henry has more from the White House.
It always leaves me with a little bit of a lump in my throat.
President Biden hosted a group of veterans at the Bo Biden National Guard and Reserve Center in Delaware to talk about the benefits of the PACT Act, a law expanding health care for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan.
We have a lot of obligations as Americans. We only have one sacred obligation. Let's prepare those we send to war and care for them and their families when they come home from war.
Congress passed the bill this summer with overwhelming bipartisan support, but it took years of fighting, even some public shaming from a well-known comedian to get the job done.
I made it real clear to the United States Congress, if they didn't pass this damn burn pit bill, I was going to go on holy war. Not a joke. And I want to thank, we had to thank someone for this. That helped a great deal. It's not here. John Stewart.
The VA is reporting very high levels of toxic exposure for the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. In a pilot screening program with more than 19,000 veterans, 37% came back with concerning levels of exposure to toxins.
Why should the burden be on the victim to demonstrate the problems they've suffered since then?
Roughly 2,500 VA claims filed so far are from veterans who say they are terminally ill. Skyler Henry, CBS News, the White House.
The VA began processing claims December 12th and will be able to finalize decisions beginning January 1st. The administration says it is prioritizing cases for those with a terminal illness.
Well, it has been a chilly one today, at least compared to where we've been. And yes, it's going to get even colder as we head into the weekend. Here's a beautiful shot right now from UVA-wise of a peaceful winter's sunset right now, or at least a late fall sunset. Meteorologically, it's winter, but in terms of astronomically, it's not winter yet until Wednesday. In any case, it's feeling like it outside. Temperatures and wise at 34. Here's the view out front here at WYMT. The sun is set, the street lights are on, and the temperature remains chilly at 43 degrees. Many of us in the low to mid 40s out there right now. So those 30s already sneaking into Southwest Virginia and Western West Virginia, though. So we'll be watching those 30s sneak in. It already feels like it in many spots thanks to those westerly breezes, 5 to 15 miles per hour. Watching a few flurries trying to sneak in from the Hoosier State. We'll be keeping an eye on it. I can't rule out a flurry overnight, so that's something we'll watch. Planning out your next few hours, 39 at 6, 36 at 10, 33 overnight, and clouds will be kind of scattered about as we head into the overnight. Details on a much colder weekend ahead in a few minutes. Steve?
All right, Evan, thanks. A man described as a ringleader during the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol has learned his fate. Today, Douglas Jensen was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Prosecutors say he was one of the first rioters to enter the Capitol and led the mob that chased an officer up flights of stairs near the Senate chamber. A jury convicted Jensen in September of all 7 charges he faced, including obstruction of an official proceeding and assaulting a police officer. Jensen's sentence includes 36 months of supervised release after he serves his prison time, and he must pay $2,000 in restitution. A humanitarian crisis is unfolding on the U.S. southern border. Each day for the past week, about 2,500 migrants have crossed the Rio Grande near El Paso, Texas, seeking asylum. Authorities are scrambling to find places to shelter them as the temperatures dip below freezing at night. As CBS's Nicole D'Antonio explains, it comes as a U.S. policy to expel and deport immigrants is about to expire.
The long line at this border crossing outside El Paso, Texas gets longer every day, with people from Ecuador, Colombia, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Many say they're fleeing persecution and poverty. This family traveled 20 days from Ecuador, where they say a criminal gang extorted them and threatened to harm their young daughter.
En un futuro, tener un buen trabajo, estudiar.
She says she's looking forward to a future of study and work. Several times a day, Border Patrol opens up the gates to let dozens of migrants in to be processed. Each day, about 1,600 are released into El Paso, where shelters and hotels are full. Many are sleeping on the streets in freezing temperatures and relying on the kindness of volunteers like Sandra Grace Martinez.
My biggest concern for them is not to die out here in the street.
This is the situation under Title 42, a policy enacted under President Trump to expel and deport immigrants before they can claim asylum due to COVID concerns. Next week, that policy is set to expire, and El Paso officials expect the number of migrants seeking asylum will double. Congressional officials tell CBS News that negotiations on a bipartisan compromise on U.S. immigration and border policy failed to gain enough support to pass by the end of this year. 19 Republican-led states have asked appeals courts to delay the termination of Title 42.
We have a crisis on the southern border. They can't deny it.
The Department of Homeland Security has released a 6-point plan for when Title 42 is lifted, including sending more resources to the border, stricter consequences for unlawful entry, and increasing efficiency in processing those who enter. Nicole D'Antonio, CBS News, Washington.
Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, how much should you be tipping? Why your holiday tips might be more important than you think.
Plus, it's getting cold outside, how long those wind chills last, and whether we could see any flurries to come along with it. Coming up after this.
WYMT News app offers alerts on breaking stories as